on the master.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. So beautiful background. All right. So L&D Shakers fellows, thank you for joining in today's workshop, Storytelling with Data and Visualization. I'm Pablo. I'm based in Sevilla, in Spain. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Ana Maria for giving me this opportunity. I'm very excited to, offer you this workshop because it's the one I normally run inside my company. But of course, it's not targeted. Normally, my audience is not L&D people, HR related. It's like any kind of, anything but L&D. So I'm very excited to have you with me, and please provide me your feedback to see like, oh, this is interesting for L&D people and culture. I can see this applying to my everyday job, or Pablo, and that's too theoretical, So let's keep it open. Let's keep it very engaging. Okay, so at any time, feel free to unmute yourself and type something in the chat box, send a GIF. Emoji, whatever you feel like. Okay, great. So just a bit about myself before we begin. This is like somehow my resume in a timeline, and I want to show you this because it's a very cool way to represent your your career in somehow way in a data way, communicating with data. Okay, it's something that I find interesting, and perhaps you do also. And this is just an example I wanted to illustrate about how you can communicate stories with data, in this case, for example, a resume. Then about myself, so you can get to know me a bit better. This is my enjoyment metrics. So you can see here things that I love and hate, and oh my God, I'm meh. So these are the things I love a lot related to work, my personal life, food and drinks. And if you go to the other side of the metrics, these are things I really not like. So I encourage you to do these enjoyment metrics because you can get to know a person very well just by having a glimpse of it. Okay. And again, it's a very great opportunity to visualize with data. In this case, your personal preference related to your work, your personal life, and food and drinks. Great. So having that said, let's move into the agenda of today. The first thing we're going to cover is why storytelling with data is essential. Okay, we're going to provide a bit of context about the importance of storytelling with data. After that, we're going to move into the process. I'm going to show you, kind of like a framework for you guys to apply to your everyday work whenever you need to present data to someone. Then we're going to have a case study in which you're going to apply everything that we learned in the storytelling with data process. Okay, so keep your eyes open because you will need to apply everything. Again, the goal is for you to not only learn but apply what you learn. And then we're going to move into the second part of the workshop, which is about choosing effective visuals. Okay, I'm going to show you what are, in my opinions, the most essential graphs and visuals that you need to be familiar if you work with data, if you present data, if someone presents you data. Okay, you should be familiar with the graphs that we will cover in that section. And then we will finish up with some takeaways and some personal learning recommendations. And again, at any point, feel free to interrupt me and mute. Let's make this an interactive and engaging session. So let's get started. And for that, I want you to go to Slido. You can find the code there. And tell me in one word, how do you feel whenever someone asks you, hey, show me the data. Show me the data about that training. Show me the data about that report. Show me the data about that initiative. Whatever. But how do you feel about it? Positive, negative? Use, if possible, one adjective. Let's see how you feel. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to Slido for 1 second. There we go. So waiting for your words, guys. Let's see what you come up with. Panic. Okay. What else? Misunderstanding. What else? Relatively stressed out. Okay. No, come on, just trust me. Yeah, if you could be that easy, right? If only. Anything else? Let's see, Christina in the waiting room. Uneasy. Okay, so as you can see, most of the feelings that show me the data evoke tend to be negative, and this is something that happened 90% of the time I run this this poll. Okay, and why is that? Well, if you think about it, at school, we are taught about math and language, but no one really teaches us how to combine those two fields together, right? Math and language, but storytelling with data is actually combining those two domains together. And if, at school, university, we don't really get formal education, and, if in our jobs, we don't receive that training, it's normal that somehow we feel, overwhelmed, confused, because again, it's something that we are not being educated. So don't worry, that's completely fine. I also feel, overwhelmed and confused oftentimes. And the goal of this workshop is for you to walk out feeling more confident and say, yes, I feel ready to present data to my audience. So having that said, thanks for your input. Let's come back to the slide deck. And let's start with the first topic of today's agenda, which is why is storytelling with data essential? Why you should, care about learning? Well, there are many reasons, but I'm gonna provide you with in my opinion, the most important ones. The first one is that communication is typically the only part of the whole analytical process that your audience will ever see. So for those of you working with data, the analytical process looks something like this. You first import it. Imagine you have an Excel file. Okay, you open the Excel file, and then you need to make sure that everything seems right. There are no missing values. The data is in different columns. Okay, everything seems tidy. Okay, and after that, you create some graphs and gain an understanding of the data. And you might repeat this process a couple of times until you really have a solid understanding of your data before communicating. And the last step is the communication piece. Okay. Now, your audience will only care about this piece, okay? They don't really care about if you're a master at citing data with Excel and, make sure there are no missing values. They don't really care about that. They only care about this, because this is the only part that they will ever see. Point number one. Point number two is like all of this part will take you approximately 80% of your time, whereas the communication piece will only take you 20. So that's another reason why you should really be a master at communicating data, because most of your time you're gonna spend it, tidying the data, understanding, and only 20% of the time communicating. So imagine if you're not very good at communicating, all of this effort and time would be wasted. Okay, so that's reason number two. Great. Now, if we move to, let's say, the L&D framework, like you mentioned, people analytics and people and culture, HR, most of you are somehow related to this kind of jobs. It happens something similar. So if you have, let's say, a training initiative, okay, you have a training, your manager says, hey, we need to run a mentorship program, okay? And we need to do a pilot training to see whether it works. If we follow, for example, one of the learning models, let's say the Kirkpatrick 4 levels, we first measure reaction, okay? And then we move into the learning, then about the behavior, and the last one would be the results, okay? And again, here happens exactly the same as before. Your audience mostly will only care about the result. What's the ROI? What are the results of this training? And is there an impact? Yes or no? They don't really care about, yeah, the training, you know, it gets people engaged and people like it. Yeah, that's fine, that's okay. But they really care about how impactful it was. And again, if you don't know how to communicate it well, no matter how well you design all of this or you measure, they, you know, part of your work will be somehow, unfortunately, wasted because your audience, again, will only care about the results. Okay. So this is not to scare you, this is just like a piece of reality that I guess most of you, you know, have somehow suffered in the real life, in the real world. And again, it's just to remind you that that's the importance of storytelling with data. You should be a master at communicating data because we live in a data world. In our jobs, L&D, HR people, we need to communicate data to our audience, internal, external, and therefore we need to be very good at it. I think, I don't know if you agree with me, any one of you presents a different point of view, like, hey, Pablo, I don't agree with you, or yeah, that's true. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. You're very quiet, and that scares me and keeps me excited at the same time. Okay, well, I guess if you remain quiet, that's a good sign. Great. So you know now the importance about data storytelling. Now, what is exactly data storytelling? Let me illustrate it with an example, okay? Again, let's imagine we have an Excel spreadsheet open and we have a bunch of numbers. We select the whole range. We do that always, and then click Insert Graph. And then we might come up with a graph which is somehow like this, okay? This is the, let's say, the Excel default graph, okay? And I mean, it's okay, it's not bad, but this is just data. This is not storytelling with data. And why it's not? Let me look at this graph and now compare it to this one, okay? It's exactly the same data, but the difference is that there is a story behind it, okay? There are tons of difference, but I want you to pay attention to just a couple of them. The first one is that there is a thoughtful design process behind it, okay? Whereas this is Excel default graph, someone, you know, spend time and effort designing this graph, making sure highlighting, for example, that in May, 2 employees quit, making a notation, and thinking about colors, you know, and removing all the values except the one from August onwards, okay? Adding a clear call to action that I want my audience to do when they are presenting with this graph, okay? And of course, all the, like I mentioned, all the design criteria about making the graph more insightful, more appealing, okay, for our eye. But the main thing is like, there is a clear call to action. I want my audience to look at this. I want my audience to do something with this graph, not just look at it. I want them to do something after they have spent 2, 3, 4 minutes staring at it, okay? And that's the main difference between data and storytelling with data. Data, it's just, you know, a visual, but it doesn't provide you insights, okay? There is not an aha moment that says, that's interesting, I didn't know that. Okay, I'm gonna change, okay? Your life goes on as usual with data, with storytelling with data, and you know, it involves change, let's say. Great. So that's the first part of the workshop. Why is essential? Again, communication and results are typically the only part that your audience will ever see, and unfortunately, the only part that they will ever care about. And again, the difference between data and storytelling with data. storytelling with data, you convey a message that gives an aha moment to your audience, okay? Fantastic. So let's cover now the second part, which is the process. I'm gonna show you now a process that I would like you to at least try out once. The next time you have a data important project that you need to communicate to someone, okay? At your company, and at your community of practice, externally, whatever, but at least follow it once. I'm sure it will help you tremendously. So for that, I want you to briefly read this case study, okay? Just skim through, don't worry about memorizing the figures, just have a brief idea about it. And Ana Maria, I'm reading now your comments. I will answer you. So what tool am I using? I'm using PowerPoint, but I keep my slides very minimalistic. So that's why perhaps you're asking. And you say you make all the work for the audience beforehand. Exactly. They don't need to skin the red. Exactly. You do all the work beforehand. Exactly.
But you were drawing on the slides, Pablo. How do you draw on the slides?
With the PowerPoint pencil tool.
Ah, okay, fun.
Yeah. Okay, everyone read the case study? Somehow familiar? Just keep, okay. 30 more seconds. Brendan, okay. Fantastic. Thumbs up if you finished reading it. All right. All right, Novella, Ana Maria, Sara, Santa. Okay. We're gonna discuss it now, so it's not like I'm gonna test you about how much you can remember, okay? Great, it's not like that kind of experiment. Great, so let's use this case study to show you the process of the storytelling with data, okay? The first thing, before you jump into your tool, your Excel, Power BI, Tableau, whatever you use to create visualizations and presentations, the first thing is to forget all about that and grab a notebook, a piece of paper, or open a Notion page, a Word template, whatever you want, and answer the following question, which is the who. So the first thing you need to answer whenever you are creating a data presentation, communication pin, is to whom am I communicating, okay? To whom am I communicating? Now, based on the case study you just read, is internal stakeholders a correct definition? Yes or no, and why? What do you think? So just to remind you, it was like a pilot training, L&D, and there were several people involved, okay, store manager, and senior leadership, HR. So isn't internal stakeholders an accurate definition? What would you say? Don't be afraid, just say yes, no.
Yes, but also I think we have to be more specific because they are all internal stakeholders, right? But I think there's a difference between store manager that has certain interests, like that's the store manager of the training store, and then HR who needs to approve that. So maybe we would like to tell them different stories.
Exactly, very well, Ana Maria, exactly. Internal stakeholders, it's right, but it's very broad, okay? We need to be more specific, okay? We need to identify the primary groups to whom we are gonna be communicating data. And in this case, we have senior leadership, the city store manager, and the head of HR, okay? Whenever you are presenting data, your goal is try to put a face to the person you are communicating, okay? Not just, senior, I don't know, HR, HR could be anyone, a junior person, a senior leader. You need to be specific, put a face to that person, okay? Once you've been specific, the next step would be to try to identify the decision maker, okay? So based on the case study you read, who do you think is the decision maker? Is it senior leadership, senior store manager, or the head of HR?
Head HR, I think you mentioned, no? They need to approve the training.
Exactly, Ana Maria. So the head of HR needs to approve the global rollout of the training. So we need her approval, okay? She is the decision maker. And in this case, she's gonna be the person we're gonna target our data presentation towards, okay? Because she has the final words, okay? Yes, see, the city store manager and senior leadership, they are involved, but she's the one that has the final word. And once you have identified the decision maker, the next step is to follow what a process they do in marketing, which is try to create your audience personas. Okay, there are tons of attributes you could link to a persona, but I'm gonna show you the three that I always add. Okay, and these are data literacy acumen, knowledge depth, and level of seniority. Okay, let's start with data literacy acumen. You need to ask yourself, okay, how data literate is this person? If I show, for example, let's say the head of HR, if I show her, different kinds of visual, would she be familiar with, like slope graph, scatter plot, horizontal bar chart, or is she only familiar with, I don't know, pie charts? And beyond pie charts, she might feel a bit lost. So this will help you again to tailor your data presentation, okay? Then the second point is knowledge depth, okay? How familiar is the person with your topic? Is she very familiar or is she not? Let's imagine, for example, the head of HR was involved in the pilot training since the very beginning, and she's very familiar with how many people were involved, midterm results and the final results. So the more knowledge she has, we can say the less level of detail is needed, okay? Now imagine the head of HR, she joined the company 3 weeks ago, and the whole pilot training is very new to her. So in that case, before jumping into the result, we might need to provide a bit of context about the mentorship. And the third one is the level of seniority. Normally, senior people tend to have common attributes, and these are time, so they tend to have busy schedules, so you know that you're going to have more limited time with them when it comes to presenting data. They have unexpected lives, so you might have a 30-minute presentation with them, but it might get shortened to 10 and just 1 hour before you start, so you gotta be ready for that. And normally they also focus on big picture insights, okay? Because again, they don't have much time to pay attention to the small details. So whenever you have the opportunity to answer these three and to link these attributes to your audience, do it, because it will help you tremendously. Now, what if you don't know the person you're communicating? Well, you can use, for example, LinkedIn and explore that person education, work, job, role related, so you can have a better idea. The goal is go from general until a level detail oriented view. Okay, so you start with to whom are communicating, a very general view, and then you go layer by layer trying to be more specific until you really put a face, let's say a profile, like these serial killers, criminalists, about to whom are you communicating. Okay, great. So that's the first thing you need to answer, the who, to whom am I communicating? And from that, work on these steps. So far, so good about the who. Anything else you would like to mention? No? Okay, all good. Fantastic, fantastic, love it. Great. So let's move into the what. So we have the who. Now we need to answer the what, okay? And again, we are not using our tool yet. We are with our blank piece of paper only answering these questions. So the what. The first question you need to ask yourself is, what does my audience care about? Okay, because you might care about something and your audience might care about something completely different. You might care about, let's say, if we follow the L&D framework, the behavior part of the training, but your audience might be focused on the result part, okay? So even though you think this is very important, your audience want to know the other part, okay? So again, you want to tailor that communication towards their needs. Following their case study, probably the head of HR is mostly interested in understanding whether the pilot training was successful or not. That's probably the first question. Hey, Sarah, was the pilot training successful? Yes or no? Yes, because blah, 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 blah. Or no, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then you also need to ask yourself, what do you want your audience to know or do? And this is something very crucial. You should always, always, always want your audience to know or do something with whatever you are presenting them. Okay, again, you want to make a change. Okay, not only like a beautiful presentation, but you want them to know or do something. Clear call to action. Following the case study, like Ana Maria mentioned before, I want, after I finish my presentation, I want the head of HR to approve the global rollout of the training. Okay, that's my main goal. I present, blah, 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 blah. Please approve the training throughout the entire company because it was very successful. And now we want to implement it throughout the entire company. And again, she has the final words, but that's our goal. That's what ideally we want to achieve. Okay. So 2 questions in the what. What does your audience care about? What do you want your audience to know? And for that, to answering these 2 questions, I encourage you to use action words. Okay. What are action words? Action words are verbs, but they invite your audience to know or do something, such as accept, agree, change, implement, learn, persuade, influence, respond, validate. Okay, I want the head of HR to approve, to agree that the pilot training was successful. I want, whatever. I try to use action words that really invite your audience to follow your call to action. So far, so good. Again, you're very quiet. I don't know if you are like with your eyes super focused on, or I'm speaking like Chinese and it sounds all very crazy. I guess it's the first thing. Okay. Okay, good. Good. Thanks for the feedback. Great. So we have the who, the what. Let's move into the mechanism, the how. Okay. How are you going to present your data? It's important to know to whom are you presenting. It's important to know what you want your audience to know or do, what do they care about. But it's also very important to identify how are you going to communicate your data. And here we're going to focus on 2 different formats. Following the case study, it said the next step is to report your findings into a face-to-face meeting. Okay, keep that in mind. Whenever you are presenting data, there are basically 2 different kinds of formats. We have a live presentation in which you are present with your audience, either face-to-face or virtually like we are right now, or it could be asynchronous, like you send them an email, a white paper, a report, but you are not there with them whenever they open it, okay? Depending on whether you're presenting is live or asynchronous, you need to keep in mind 2 things. The first one is the amount of control you have. In a live presentation, the amount of control you have is very high because you are there with the audience. If your audience has any questions, you are there to answer, to shed light. you have complete control over, let's say, your slides. Right now, I can, move faster, I can speed up, I can slow down, I can skip all the slides and move to the last one, for example. That's entirely up to me. I have complete control, okay? However, whenever you are presenting data in an asynchronous way, let's say, for example, an email, the amount of control you have is very low, because believe me, no matter whether you create the greatest report ever, you can control that your audience will read it page by page. They will spend time reflecting on the things you want them to reflect. Perhaps you create a report and they only read 10% of it. And that's something, unfortunately, that you can control and you have to live with it. Okay. So that's the first reason, amount of control you have. And the second one is the level of detail needed. In a live presentation, the level of detail needed is very low. And why is that? Because in a live presentation, okay, you have your audience, and that is you with your beautiful slides, okay? And your audience has two inputs. It has your, let's say, vocal inputs. So right now you are listening to me and this is an input, but they also have the input from the slides, okay? So two inputs. However, in an asynchronous format, let's say an email, your audience will only have one input, and that's, in this case, for example, the slide, okay? You are not there to provide insight with your voice. Therefore, because here you have two and here one, the level of detail needed here is low. Because again, if you are presenting something live, a piece of advice I give you is try to keep it very simple, okay? Whenever you can explain something with your voice, use it rather than use adding text, okay? Keep your slides minimalistic. Use your voice to explain things. Only keep in the slides the things you want your audience to be familiar with, okay? Because again, you are there. In an asynchronous way, this is not the case. You are not there to, when the person opens the email, hey, now go over this. You are not there. So you need to provide way more input, way more text, way more visuals, and way more detail, okay? So again, this will help you whenever you want to present data. Also very important, in case you need to present the same data story in both formats, I recommend you to do two different presentations. One for a live presentation and another one for asynchronous, okay? This is something that most people don't do. They use the same for both. And what happens is whenever you're presenting, you find a slide with a wall of text, and your audience is reading, is listening to you, they feel lost and they don't know what to do, okay? So that's an advice I can give you, and again, something that I try to implement whenever I present it. Great, so I know it's a lot to input, but we are almost there, and you're gonna apply all of this in the case study. So just before, any question about the how? Does this make sense? Great. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Ana Maria and Santa. Okay, fantastic. So let's move into the last part of the process, which is the big idea, okay? The so what. Your audience will always, 99% of the time, will wonder, that's a nice presentation. So what? What should I do? Should I change my life? Should I promote you? Should I fire someone? Should I whatever? You need to answer the so what, okay? And again, for that, we're gonna use a concept called the big idea. And the big idea boils down to articulating in a single sentence what is at stake and your unique point of view, okay? You should always, and I stress this, convey your message and your point of view. You are the subject matter expert of your data, okay? Regardless of whether you're presenting to senior leadership, to the CEO of the company, you are the subject matter of the data, okay? Because you have spent tons of time and effort with the data. You are the one that has the greatest understanding of it, okay? So don't feel intimidated, because it happens to me like, oh, I need to present this to the higher ups. Should I really stress my point of view? Yes, you should, okay? Because it's your responsibility. So again, following the case study, we could come up with something like pilot training results indicate that the program help a skills talent, sales skills to ensure what is at stake, to ensure driving tangible business results. And now I'm going to frame my unique point of view. I strongly recommend the program's implementation, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But again, look at how I use again 2 action words, okay, to convey this, to ensure what is at stake. Well, if we don't do this, you know, the pilot training was great, but nothing else will come up after. So that's what is at stake. And then my unique point of view, well, the pilot training was successful, and therefore I recommend the implementation throughout the entire company. Okay, very simple in one single sentence. This is probably the main takeaway for your audience. Oftentimes, unfortunately, the only piece that they will ever read. So make sure to frame it very well. Okay, fantastic. So any questions about the process, about the who, the how, the what, and the so what, before we jump into the case study? Was it everything clear? Okay, fantastic. So now you're gonna apply everything that we covered in Miro, okay? And for that, let me show you how are we gonna do it. You're gonna jump into Miro, okay? And for those of you who are not familiar with, hold on a second. Okay, the first thing you want to do is to go to navigate to the settings and click navigation mode, sorry. And make sure that if you're using a mouse, you click apply, and if you're using trackpad, you click apply, okay? That's the only thing you need to worry, okay? You click apply, and then you will see this, and then you're gonna click on the blue arrow that corresponds to the breakout room that you are. So if you're in breakout room number 1, you go here, you click, and then you have the case study. First, read it through and discuss it with your team members, and then answer the who, the what, the how, and the big idea. Use the post-it notes, double click to type your questions. And the oval shapes, you can click them and drag them whenever you want. Whenever you want, either low, average, or high, okay? And that's basically it. I'm gonna give you for that 10 minutes. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna discuss what you wrote, okay? So let me share the link into the chat before I open the breakout rooms. And I'll be here in the main room in case you have any questions, okay? Everyone's ready? All right, so have fun. There we go. I'm gonna create, I'm gonna create 4, okay? Let me see. 1 second. Okay, so there you go. 10 minutes approximately, okay? Cristina and Mihaela, are you able to join?
Hey, Pablo. I am
yes.
one in that room.
You are the only one?
Yes. I was in a room 4 and I was only one there.
Well, there are two people, Christina, but she didn't join. Okay, so I'm gonna move you into room number 3, okay? All right. All right, welcome back. How did it go?
My God, I'm sweating.
I was seeing the cursor moving like crazy from one place to another. Great, but what I read, it was good. So what do you think if a volunteer for each group discusses, like, for example, a section, for example, so group 1, either Mijaela or Ana Maria, could you please discuss the who?
I will ask Ana Maria if she would like to.
Yes. You're
Thank
putting it here, Pablo. Good.
think.
Okay. Yes. So we are communicating to internal stakeholders, specifically from the HR department or people department, however it's called. And we will mainly communicate to Marta, head of people and culture, who is also the end decision maker for this project. And also to our manager, Tom, the director of learning and development. We believe that we hope that they are somewhere on average with data literacy because they're in HR. So if they're high, they're superstars, good for them. I'm sure they're not low because I mean they have like high end, like really high functions. So they're directors and so on, head of culture. So we went for average. Knowledge depth, we think that Marta has very low because she just joined the company 4 months ago. So she's new to the company. She has no idea about this project. And we do hope that Tom has more knowledge because he's our direct manager. So I think we would have keep him involved and informed throughout the process as well. So we think he's high. And level of seniority, both are high because director and head of people and culture.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Everything is correct.
Yay!
Well done, group number 1.
Let
me tell you, high five, yes. I like the assumption you made, and it's the right one to make. Whenever, like, for example, for data literacy, whenever you are not sure, try to think about like the role, like how senior someone is. Normally, the more senior a person is, the higher the level of data literacy he or she should have. Okay, so, but it's okay. Average, I will also place average. So yes, I'm knowledge depth low because Marta joined recently, whereas Tom high. Yeah, perfect. So no other thoughts. Very good. Let's move to group number 2. So either Novella, Cristina, or Alejandro. Let's discuss the what. Any one of you, please.
I can go ahead. Hi. So about this. Okay, there you go. Okay, yeah. So the who first. We are communicating to Marta, which is the new head of people and culture.
Sorry, Alejandro. Let's jump directly into the what.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. What does your audience care about? We are sure that it's a return of investment. They've invested in this big program, so they want to see results. They want to generate engagement and knowledge retention. It's about mentorship. So knowledge retention is important and employee retention as well. And then what do they need to know? That the program is working, obviously, because they are investing with 120 participants. It's a big program in the company, and they want to know if the participants want it to continue or not. And we know the fact that 90% 91%, so about 110 of the participants are satisfied with it. So it's all good.
Okay, fantastic. But let me ask you, Novella and Christina, this. So Mijael and Maria identify the decision maker, who is Marta, the head of people and culture. And my question is there anything in particular that you want Marta to do or know related to the mentorship? Any specific call to action that you want her to, to do or not?
Okay, I think that we skipped do. I mean, at least me. What do you need your audience to do? And yeah, I skipped that. We skipped that. Basically, we want her to replicate that. So to come on board and replicate, continue the program. So basically that, just simple as that.
Yes, exactly. We want her cooperation. Okay.
Yeah.
Her cooperation is critical to make, let's say, the mentorship program again next year. So we want her to cooperate. So that's the action. And the no, you did very well. I love how L&D people think about engagement, knowledge retention, and all of this. Wonderful. Fantastic. So very well done. Group number 2. Let's move into group number 3. Santa, Brendan, and Sarah, could you please discuss the how and the big idea?
I can go.
All right.
There was funny. Sorry to read your sticky notes at some point, guys. The only report to
We
create.
did the same.
Let me tell you, that's my fault. It was clear enough because all of you did it, and that's my fault. Sorry. The report was already sent, so you didn't need to worry about that. It was about the 30-minute video call.
Yeah, some point I saw but there are all the checks here, so that means it's already all been done, and then we just have to focus on the bold part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took a while, but we got there. Okay, so the amount of control is high because we will have a video call and we will present it. So we thought, okay, then the level of detail needed is also low because we'll be there, and there is also written reports. I was like, okay.
Great. And Sarah, will you use the same report that you sent to Marta by email for this 30-minute video call?
Oh, no.
Why?
I will not. It's different. So that one is more detailed, and that's why this is low level of detail needed.
Exactly. Very good.
Thanks.
Very good. That was a tricky question. Great. What about the big idea?
Oh, also me?
Or Brendan or Santa, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, if one of the two wants to continue, I'll pass the microphone.
Santa, what about you?
Let me switch the screens. So yes, the big idea that we will present is that mentorship program was successfully received by the most of employees. To ensure that there are no negative impacts on culture of organization by not running this program, we strongly recommend this program. Wait, I need to read it. Yes, we strongly recommend this program. I cannot read it.
Right.
Maybe Brendan can read it and help me out. Why we recommend. Thank you. So yes, we strongly recommend the mentorship program that is launched in wider across the organization, and that will achieve the high level of satisfaction by participants. Thank you, Pablo, for making it big.
Wonderful, love it. Wonderful, very good. Team number 3. Exactly. So basically, cut to the chase. Mentorship program was successful because blah 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 blah. And again, because it was successful, we recommend your cooperation for, you know, rolling it out again next year. So very good. So just as all of you did a very good job. I saw that you applied what we covered in the first section. So how was this? Do you think is this something that you can apply, you know, to your everyday job, or too much work, or not really interested in, or whatever?
Well, I think there's a reflection is always needed, and the more you reflect before sending out something, and the more strategically you can think. I mean, like, it's the relevance of what you're producing. So I think it's really interesting, really.
Exactly, and it's all about what Ana Maria mentioned. It's like we've spent nearly 45 minutes so far only working on the pre-work of our communication. We haven't done anything, any visuals, any stories, anything, but we have a very clear understanding of what we want to communicate and to whom, okay? And trust me, this is way better than jumping directly into Excel, because you're gonna need to come back to say, but what is the action point? But who is my audience? Am I presenting live? Okay, what if my meeting gets shortened to 10 minutes? Blah, 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 blah. And then perhaps you need to go back, remove things. So it's better to have a good understanding. All right, so how are you feeling so far? Let's place your arm like this, 90 degrees. If you're feeling like, yes, super energetic, you're gonna place like this. And if you feel like, Pablo, I want to go to sleep, you're gonna place it like this. So I can see how are you feeling right now. Okay, over the moon, siesta time. Well, not for me, but perhaps for Alejandro. Okay, all of you are doing well. Fantastic. So we have the second part of the workshop. I'm very aware of time, but I didn't want to stop you guys because I was saying like you had a very thoughtful discussion in the mirror board. So I tell you in advance, we're gonna run out of time. It's okay if you are not able to make it. It's been recorded, and if you need to jump out of the session, we can always send you the report. But in my opinion, I encourage you to stay, because now comes the second part, which is about the visual elements, and it's about the graph, and it's very, very interesting. So if you can make it and stay a bit longer, I would appreciate it, okay? Great, so having that said, absolutely. Let's move on into the second part. All right. Let's move into choosing an effective visual. So we cover everything about the pre-work. Now we're gonna get our hands dirty into creating visuals, okay? But before that, we need to be familiar with the different types of visual we can create, always depending on the type of data we have, okay? I love pie charts, but perhaps you have time series data, so you shouldn't use a pie chart for that, okay? Even though it's your preferred chart, okay? Always think about the data you have, your input, to create your output. And the first visual I want you to start right away applying to your data stories is text. But Pablo, text is not a graph. Really? Yes, text is probably one of the most powerful visual elements you can include in your data stories, okay? It's simple, it's clear, and everyone is familiar with, okay? Everyone understands a paragraph or a sentence. So following the case study you guys just covered in the mirror board, we could use text whenever we want to communicate one or two numbers, okay? More than two, don't use text. If you have one or two numbers, think about using text. So for example, we could say 91% of participants are very satisfied and want the mentorship program to continue, okay? This seems very simple, but there is a thoughtful design criteria behind it. And let me walk you through very briefly. First of all, whenever you're communicating text and you include one or two numbers, you want to make your numbers very prominent, okay? Bigger, bold, in a way that they stand out more than the text that goes with it, okay? So in this case, 91% is the highest hierarchy in my visual elements. It has the biggest font, and it's bold, and it's in blue, okay? Research tells us that whenever we want to convince someone to believe something, blue, dark blue, is the preferred color to do that, okay? So if you want to influence, persuade, convince someone, think about using blue. That's reason number one. And whenever you are presenting, you can see the slide. I have only the text and everything is white space, okay? Because I want your attention to not deviate from this text. If I start adding element to the slide, then this visual element, the text, loses, let's say, appealing. So always think about using text with tons of white space, okay? Like this. And again, if you have something to convey, for example, you can use like the blue of the 91 linked to very satisfied, so your audience will immediately link unconsciously, okay? Before we jump into the visuals, let me explain something to you that I don't know if you were familiar. In Western civilizations, and I sound like an historian teacher, like Western countries, like, English, Western languages like English, French, Italian, Spanish, and so on, people tend to read slides, screens, and books in this way. So they will first read whatever is on the top left of the screen, and then they will move their eyes in a Z shape, like this. Okay, so they will start reading this. If there is something here, they will read the second. This will be the third, and this is the fourth. And why is this important, again, for Western languages? Because you want your audience, this is like UI, you want your audience to follow this invisible path unconsciously. So you want to, in this case, I only have one fact, but if I had more than one, I would probably place this here. So this is the first thing that my audience will ever see. And in case there is a note or something, a legend, I will place it perhaps here, okay? Or a clear, I don't know, annotation that is not really important, but I want them to remember at the end, okay? So think about this UI set a shape for your visuals. Great. So we covered text. Let's move into tables. And I see Word to Calibri, novela, Word to Comics, Sans, also, no? What is your company logo and colors have no blue? Well, if your company colors have no blue, you should talk to your chief of design and say why they don't have blue.
Complain.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's a good question. Break the rules and use blue for your presentation. Okay. So tables. Tables interact with our verbal system, which means that we read a table the same way we read a newspaper, okay? Our brain processes information the same way. So here you have a table. You will read this table, down columns like this or across rows, okay? And the amount of time it will take you is approximately the same that it will take you to read a book, okay? Which is very, very long. And for that reason, my advice is whenever you are presenting data, avoid tables because they take a lot of cognitive effort for your audience, okay? And ideally you don't want that because if you have a table and you also have your voice, your audience will be spending tons of time on reading the table, comparing the values, hearing you. So use tables, in white papers, reports, and so on, but presentation, not highly recommended. Having that said, if you use tables, something to keep in mind is the borders, okay? Look at these tables. It has heavy borders, okay? Apparently nothing is wrong with it, but from a, let's say, visual design point of view, it takes a lot of cognitive, again, effort, okay? The table is what it stands out, and ideally we don't want that. We want the data to stand out. For that, you can use light borders. Here, the data stands out more than the borders. And you can also go with minimal borders, okay? If you compare this table with this, the data stands out way more than the borders. Here, unconsciously, your eyes will look at the borders. Here, your eyes will pay attention to the data, okay? So this is something to keep in mind. A small detail, but makes your tables in this case way better, and way better for your audience also. Having that said, a table I recommend you to use, it's a heat map, okay? A heat map, I'm sure you're all familiar with. You can use them in PowerPoint, in Excel. It's basically a way of representing tabular data, so data that is in a table, leveraging color related to the value of each cell, okay? And this is very good because beyond the values of each cell, you also convey the, let's say, the intensity or the relative value for that cell, okay? So this is bigger than this is bigger than this is more than that, okay? So a heat map, very useful for plotting tabular data whenever you have it, okay? And again, try to use, if, for example, I created this using Excel, and for this I used a 3-color palette, okay? The lowest color being white, 50 percentile, bit light blue, and the highest one darker blue, okay? But all of the colors are blue. Why? Because I want my audience to link blue with blue. If I have blue with green, they will have to compare blue with blue, green with green. And again, that's another level of cognitive effort. The more you can ease that, the better. So that's a heat map. Great choice for plotting tabular data. So far, so good. Any questions about tables, text? All right, let's move on to graphs. So whereas tables interact with our verbal system, graphs do with our visual system, okay? In a way that is way faster at processing information, okay? Think about Formula 1 races, okay? Whenever the pilot is ready, okay, there is the light goes red, orange, green, speed up, okay? There is not a letter that says go. And why is green and not the letter go? Because the amount of time that it takes for the driver to speed up seeing the color green is way faster than reading go, okay? So this analogy illustrates that whenever you're presenting in a live presentation, graphs is a good choice because, again, it takes less time for your audience to digest them, okay? Especially if you have complex graph with ton of information. Having that, let's move into a couple of graphs that you should be familiar. The first one is a scatter plot, okay? A scatter plot has two variables. We have, this is the x-axis, okay? And this is the y-axis. In the x-axis, we have our independent variable, and in the y, the dependent variable. So basically, this means that this variable influences this one, okay? Oh, sorry for that. So session duration influences number of attendees, okay? Now, the way to read a scatter plot is the same, is the following one. You're gonna look at the x-axis, and you're gonna, for example, locate a point. Let's say this one, okay? So you go like this. So this could be approximately 90 minutes, okay? Session duration, 90 minutes. And this would correspond to 50 attendees, okay? We have here number of attendees and session duration. So this point represents someone, it represents 50 people who were in an online session for 90 minutes approximately, okay? Now, as you can see, there is somehow, if you trace a line, it seems like the line goes down, okay? And why is that? Well, if you think about it, it somehow makes sense. But again, this is like you need to come up with a theory, but I'm gonna explain one that could make sense. So let's say, for example, in unconventional, okay, that it was a couple of weeks ago, and there were tons of sessions, okay? Now, they were sessions ranging from 30 minutes, 40, 60, and more, okay? Now, imagine, this is a session that lasted 50 minutes, and it had, let's say, 140 people, okay? And we can see that as the session duration increases, so the longer a session is, the fewer attendees, okay? And why is that? Well, somehow it makes sense, right? Like if a session is very long, people tend to get bored, disengaged, you know, anxious. They might get tired of seeing your face. So blah, 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 blah. So the longer a session is, the fewer attendees, okay? This could be, again, a theory, but it's up to you to try to find out. To keep it simple, a headline could be a session duration increases, a session duration increases, the number of attendees decreases, okay? So we have a lot of people in short sessions and very few in long sessions. That's basically a scatter plot. Good. And if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt or type them in the chat box, okay? Now let's move into, I'm gonna speed up a bit now, and if you have questions, we can answer them at the end or whenever I read them. So we have now a line graph, okay? A line graph is very useful whenever you have time series data, okay? And by time series, I mean days like this, so Monday, Tuesday. Each of these units represents one day, okay? But it could also be months, years, quarters, decades, and you know, whatever time series format that you can think about, okay? And here, this is the x-axis, so we have week days in the x-axis, and in the y, we have number of attendees, so frequency. So we can see that on Monday, there were roughly 7,000 attendees in, you know, in this conference, okay? And we can see somehow a pattern, okay, over time. As the week went by, the number of attendees decreased, okay? Line graphs are very useful for that, for plotting trend over time, okay? What is the story behind this graph? Well, there are tons of stories. There is not a single answer fits all. Here, it's, for example, the number of attendees decline as each day passes. Another story could be Monday presents the largest number of attendees, whereas Friday, the lowest one. You know, could be tons of different things, depending on what, again, you want your audience to know. But basically, a line graph, very useful for plotting trend over time, okay? Trend over time. An important thing, before I forget, make sure, because I see this a lot, and I saw this in the latest Simon Sinek book that we read in the book club, so imagine even Simon Sinek or the editor made that mistake. So for example, we can see here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and imagine instead of Friday, we have here weekend, okay? What is wrong with that? Well, this is a single unit, so one day, one day, one day, one day, and all of a sudden this is 2 days, okay? So this is not the same as one day. This is wrong. All these units need to be consistent, okay? Pay attention to that. Good. Similar to the line graph, we have the slope graph. The slope graphs are a very valuable choice whenever you want to, again, have series time format, but you only have two values. So in this case, I have 2020 and 2021, and I want to compare 2020 with 2021, okay? I use 2 points and a slope to compare them. The good thing about slope graphs is that they are very intuitive, okay? You don't really need to explain them to your audience. They will immediately know what do they represent. So they will know, okay, this is decreasing, this is increasing, this is increasing, okay? So again, very useful whenever you want to compare two time series values. So that's a slope graph, again, very useful choice for 2 time series values. And then we have the all-time favorite horizontal bar chart. This is probably the one I recommend you whenever you don't know what to do and you have categorical data, okay? Categorical data. So in this case, we have departments of a company, and these are names, okay? They are not numbers, somehow categories, that's why it's called. So a horizontal bar chart is a very good choice whenever you have categorical variables and you want to, you know, measure their frequency, their values, whatever, okay? A couple of things to keep in mind whenever you are creating a horizontal bar chart. This is called, the space between each bar is called the gap width, okay? The gap width, you should keep it, if you use Excel, to 30 to 40%, okay? Normally Excel, we create the bars thinner, like this, but this is the default. I recommend you to increase it to 30 to 40, because that way, the distance between each bar is smaller and your audience will spend less time comparing the values, okay? Something to keep in mind. What else about the horizontal bar chart? Ah, yes, again, these are also very intuitive because they are everywhere. In your bank application, in your Fitbit application, in your you know, Teams Slack application, they're everywhere. So your audience is very familiar with it. That means less of a learning curve for them to interpret them and more time on gaining insight from it. Thanks, Novella, no worry. Thanks for the feedback. I absolutely understand it. Thanks for your time. We are about to finish. Now, graphs to be avoided at all cost, okay? At all cost. What I'm gonna show you is gonna surprise you, but it's gonna surprise you in a bad way because these graphs are everywhere. In the news, I'm sure a lot of people within your companies use them. And the reason why they use them is because no one ever told them, hey, this is bad, you shouldn't do this. They keep on using them, and yeah, it's very bad. Exactly. So Brendan, the 3D pie chart, it goes here. Okay. So what is wrong with the 3D pie chart? What is wrong with it? Well, there are tons of things wrong, but if I ask you right now, what is the department that presents the largest slides? What would you say? Which department has the largest slides?
Operations or IT.
No, or. I need a clear-cut answer.
Operations.
Operations, okay. Brendan, sales, okay. So you can see only 2 people answer and there is no consensus already. Okay. Anyone else dares to have a guess? Sales and okay, Alejandro, please say sales and operation are the same. Sales, no, he changed his mind, sales only. Okay. Well, regardless of what the answer is, the first thing you need to notice is without the percentages, you don't have a clear picture of what is the largest department. And then you say, hey, Pablo, yeah, but if you include the percentages, then that shouldn't be a problem. But my answer is, whenever you need to, present values, percentages, to really make your data understandable, you are losing your point. Okay, that's not the point of the graph. In this case, the largest department is sales. Okay, is sales. Sales is the largest department. And why is that? Because if you look at my hand in the camera, a 3D pie chart is tilted, okay? So the portions located far away look smaller than the ones that are closer to you, okay? And this is very bad and people use it at all times, okay? So I want you to stop for a second and let me, right now, raise your right hand place it like this, and repeat after me. I will never, ever use 3D pie charts for my data presentation. Fantastic, 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 guys. So don't use 3D pie charts. And you might be asking, great, Pablo, but what about normal pie charts? Well, my recommendation is don't use them, okay? People are in love with them, but a graph shouldn't be, you shouldn't decide on a graph based on how beautiful it is, but also how insightful, how easy it is to understand. And a pie chart is not very easy to understand. You need to spend a lot of time comparing the values, okay? So don't use them. Whenever you're presented with them, do the Obama face, like, what the hell is this? And should I trust you? Should I not? What is this person doing, okay? Thanks, Sarah. Have a nice day. Hope to see you in the next one. So what should you do instead of pie chart? Go with an horizontal bar chart, okay? Even without the values, even if I were to remove the values from here, okay, you would immediately recognize the largest part, okay? You don't need the percentage. Your eyes will immediately recognize that sales is the largest, HR is the smallest, but also your eyes will be able to somehow compare the incremental difference between each bar, okay? So go for a follow Dreg's recommendation, say no to pie charts, and yes to bar graphs, okay? That's my probably the most important takeaway for you for this whole workshop. And that's everything from my side, guys. Just to remind you the takeaways of what we learned today. We learned about why storytelling with data is essential. Again, communication, unfortunately, is the only piece that your audience will ever see and most often care about. We cover the process, the audience, the who, the what, the mechanisms, the how, and the so what, with the big idea. And we also learned about choosing effective visuals, text, tables, and heat map, and for different graphs, scatter plot, line graph, slope graph, horizontal bar charts, and charts to be avoided at all costs, pie charts, okay? Don't use them. And if you see someone using them, kindly say, hey, could I provide you with feedback? No, okay, then go ahead with your life. If they say yes, explain them, hey, you shouldn't use pie charts. I recommend you to use horizontal bar chart because of X, Y, Z, okay? No, I didn't know, you get promoted. And that's how you move into data analytics, okay? And that's basically everything from my side, guys. If these are 3 books I recommend you in case you are interested in learning more, and all of them cover what we discussed today. They are focused on the data story, not creating visuals, but in communicating them. So check them out. That's everything from my side. Thanks for your time. If you want to reach out, that's my LinkedIn. I'm also in the Shakers. I'm gonna propose you a challenge that I will post in the Learning Analytics channel in Slack for you to apply what you learned in the last section of this workshop about visuals, okay? I will present a brief challenge. So for those of you who are interested in, keep an eye on the Learning Analytics channel. Thanks for your time. I think, I don't know in which tense I'm speaking now. I hope this workshop was helpful, and more importantly, that you will apply everything that we learned today. And I need to drink water. Any thoughts, feedback?
Thank you, Pablo. Well, I'm shocked. What can I say? Like, you're shattered. You've shattered my world. You're like, damn, all those missed opportunities, right? To make a good impression.
A world without 3D pie charts. How is that? Imagine it.
My God.
No, I think, listen, I think it's, well, it's not only until you apply everything that you reflect like, okay, it was useful, but I'm sure, hopefully, that you will take some of the pieces for your next data projects, and you will wow your audience like, oh, Santa, that looks awesome. What is that chart? Tell me about it. Or Alejandro, that's a clear call to action. I know what to do. I don't need to read the executive summary anymore. Okay, so thanks. Yeah, let's stay in touch. And if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot it, okay?
Thank you, Pablo.
All right. Have a nice, not really by shirt evening.
This was really fun.